Back in the garage here with the 2010 Audi Q5. I've had this vehicle for about 40,000 miles and it's time to do brakes. So I've got all new rotors and pads. We're going to replace them and we're going to clean things up, make it look nice while we're there. So let's get started. Okay, we got the vehicle up off the ground. Time to pop out the center cap. And there are some things you just have to farm out, and one is mounting and balancing the tires. And so I took it to Pep Boys, and they broke this thing, this center cap. They broke it. I noticed it a week or two later. I hate bringing my vehicles anywhere to have anybody do anything to them. But short of buying a wheel mounter and tire balancer, you got to do it. Okay, 17 millimeter. Oh, and I knocked a couple of weights off. Son of a gun. And there we are. We should be good to go now. Back in balance. Alright, let's get this piece of hardware off of here first. Okay, so looking on the back of the caliper, we've got two 13 millimeter bolts we're going to take off. This one and this one. So these two, 13 millimeter. Hopefully you can see that. And then this caliper will come off. Go. Got a big lip here. Okay, and then when we get this off, we're going to hang it up out of the way. I'm going to disconnect this. There we go. I just did. Okay, again on the back side here, we're going to take this carrier off, and they're two 21 millimeter bolts, pretty good size bolts. Here's one, and there's the other right there. And those two bolts will remove this caliper carrier. And there's the carrier. And then to get the rotor off, we've got a T30 Torx fastener. I'm going to kind of go gentle on this. There we go. And this rotor should come off now. There we go. I mean, there's the back side of it. Maybe making contact with 50% of the rotor surface. The front side was a little better, but yeah, this thing is pretty well shot. So this is good. Next, I want to clean up the surface here. Alright, so pretty standard stuff. I'm going to clean the face of this stainless steel piston here, just so it's nice and clean. When we put our clean, brand new pad up against it. Can't get a wheel in here because it's too tight. A little bit of brake clean. There we go. That looks good. I'm also going to clean the back of this caliper where the outside brake pad will go to. A little dirty, I just want to show you that, so I'm going to clean that up as well. And a wire brush will work good for this. Just be careful that you're not twisting the brake hose too much. Alright, now I'm going to compress this piston here in this caliper. Check and make sure the master cylinder is not filled to the top, because I'm going to push all the fluid that's in here back up into the master cylinder. And so if anyone has topped it off in the past, you could overflow. Actually, I'm going to try. Alright, since I'm in here, and this looks pretty grungy, and I want to paint this up, make it look kind of nice. So I'm going to put this in my blast cabinet, get it nice and clean, and then we're going to try some paint. I'm not sure if I want to go with red or just maybe flat black, but alright, here's the results of the sandblast cabinet. I'm just going to clean and paint the areas that you can see. And this is not a GT2 RS or anything, it's a daily driven Q5. So, I mean, basically this is the part you're going to see through the spokes, and that'll be clean and freshly painted. Alright, so we're going to clean this with brake clean. Area, what I've sandblasted is all you can really see from the outside, so I'm fine with that. And we'll just keep cleaning things up here. Alright, so I'm going to paint this stuff. I put it on here so I don't have to hold it, it'll stay in place. I got the rotor out of the way, so I won't paint that. I covered up the areas that I don't want to put paint on. So I'm going to paint this. I believe I'm going to paint this red and these black. And then I've got some decals, and I want to put like an Audi decal right here on the rotor. This is a rough casting, so I don't think the decal is going to stick very good to this rough casting. So I'm going to grind that down smooth. So I have a nice smooth surface to put that decal on there. Hopefully. So let's see how that goes. So here's what I'm going to try. I've got a grinder with a flap wheel on it, and I'm going to see if I can grind this surface smooth. Okay, here we are. Here's a closer look. It's still, I don't know if the camera's doing it much justice, but it feels much, much smoother. And I think if I put a decal on there, I get a lot more decal surface stuck to the caliper rather than, I mean, that's what the rough casting looked like. If you can imagine trying to put a decal on that, it would never stick. But if I can put enough paint on there maybe to fill some of those valleys, and we'll see. But it's worth a shot. Alright, so we got it cleaned and dried with a bunch of brake clean. I warmed it up with a heat gun because it's a little chilly. It's actually snowing like crazy outside, but warmed up to aid the paint and drying a little quicker. Got VHT caliper paint, red. I'm going to see how this looks. Hopefully it looks nice. No reason to think it wouldn't. And we'll just go with a couple light dustings. I don't care about painting the carrier because I'm just going to paint black over it. It's just a couple extra coats of paint. I'm not going to bother taping it off. There's a tendency to lay it on thick and you end up with runs, so I'm going to leave it like that for the first coat. Maybe hit it with a heat gun to try to dry it quicker. And then do a couple more light coats. I'm not going to put a ton of paint on it, just enough to cover it all up. So there's coat one. Alright, it seems to be drying. It was pretty quick. I hit a heat gun to it just to reduce the drying time. So you can see there, it's about 106 degrees. I'm not scorching it. I don't want to burn the paint, but I did kind of warm things up. And now I can touch this because I'm going to repaint this. This is all dry. And I've only painted it like 4 or 5 minutes ago. So I'm going to put another coat on it. Okay, here's coat number 2. Covers very quickly. Again, you got to guard against putting too much on. The more you put on, the shinier it gets, but then you see a big drip. So that's enough, and now I'm going to use my heat gun again to speed up the drying time. The old caliper is nice and warm, so that paint should dry pretty quickly. Alright, so I pulled the caliper off now, and I'm just going to paint this carrier bracket black. And since I've already got a couple of red coats of paint, I got protection against rust. Now I'm just looking to cover it with black. And be careful not to overspray it to get drips. So that looks good. Now I'll heat it with the heat gun to kind of speed up the drying time. Okay, here we are. We're done with the painting. Now I'm going to take this bracket off and get the rotor back out. We'll start reassembling things. Alright, going to put the rotor on. Before we do, we're going to put a little fluid film on the face. Living up here in the Northeast, that'll corrode on there and be difficult to get off at some point down the road. Here's the rotor. Beautiful 320 millimeter Brembo. Alright, next thing we're going to install is the carrier. We're going to put a little Loctite on these carrier bolts. Okay, that's the brackets. Alright, so before I put the brake pads in here, I want to lubricate a couple surfaces. The outside of this piston, the outside lip that comes in contact with the pads. We want to grease that up just a little bit. And also what we cleaned up prior to the backside of these ears. Back here we want to lube this up, which is coming in contact with the back of the outer pad to kind of stop any corrosion and any brake noise that you might get without it. So that's done. Take care not to scratch or put any fingerprints on this freshly painted caliper. I'm going to assemble it without touching the freshly painted surface, which is easier said than done. Okay. Alright, that pad's in. Clean these with brake cleaner prior to this. This pad is in. Now again, without touching much of the painted surface, make sure this hose isn't twisted. And the other screw. Started. And so now we're starting to get an idea what it's going to look like. Looks pretty nice. And these 13 mil, I'm going to tighten these by hand. I want to go gorilla with the air impact. And then we're going to hook up this sensor. Put it in place just like we found it. Okay, so we're starting to see how it looks. Looks very nice. I'm happy with it. I'm going to do one final detail, and that is I want to get this Audi decal on here. And this is why I grinded this smooth, to give a nice smooth surface to get this to adhere nicely. And I think I get it's a one-shot deal here. Alright, here we go. Here goes nothing. Looking at the halfway point, dead center is here, so I'm going to get the center of the decal right about here. How does that look? Because I'm about to press it on there. I think that looks pretty good. Now hopefully I can peel this plastic off and the decal will stay on the caliper. How's that look, huh? That looks awesome. Alright, I think we're ready for the wheel. Okay, we're all set. Look at that, that looks awesome. What a difference. What is that, an Q5? Okay, so here we are, back on the ground, and this is a glimpse of what it looks like parked, and then of course when you're moving you'll be able to see the whole thing. Should look very cool. And that's the fronts, and I'll do another video of the rears. Thanks for watching.